Peace, family. Y'all know who it is. It's Bakari Lumumba, the progenitor of LumumbaSpeaks.com, a Black empowerment initiative where we believe we could gain a competitive advantage by always betting on Black. We're doing a dual stream once again this Sunday afternoon. If you're here on the East Coast, Sunday morning, if you're on the West Coast, where we're going to be discussing a white woman threatened to call the cops on me. False reporting should be a crime with none other than our good brother, LeRon L. Barton. So we're going to bring him right in, family. Very quickly, just want to read Brother Barton's bio here, which it is, of course, extensive. LeRon L. Barton is a writer from Kansas City, Missouri, currently living in San Francisco, California, a graduate of the Peso Academy of Fine Arts. LeRon is the author of 2 books, Straight Dope, a 360-degree look into American drug culture, and All We Really Need Is Love, stories of dating, relationships, heartbreak, and marriage. In addition to his books, LeRon is an essayist whose topics cover racism, mass incarceration, politics, gender, and dating. These works have appeared in Black Enterprise, Salon, Harvard Business Review, The Good Man Project, the Tango Media Diversity, Elephant Journal, East Bay Times, and of course, MOAD. LeRon is an international speaker who has given 3 TEDx speeches and has appeared at Al Jazeera, the University of San Francisco, Navis, Speakers Who Dare, NAS Dubai, Glide Memorial Church, Los Altos Chamber of Commerce, Square Defy, and Defy Ventures. In his spare time, LeRon enjoys mentoring African American youth, teaching creative writing at San Francisco County Jail, and backpacking around the world. So without further ado, family, let me introduce to you all the 21st century Paul Robeson, a true Renaissance man, Brother LeRon L. Barton. How you doing this morning?
I'm doing really well, man. That's incredible. Bakari, you are way too kind, man. That's cannot stand next to a giant like Mr. Robeson, but I'm trying to do my thing.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. No problem. No problem. We like to big up here. Of course, Lumumba Speaks and Beacon Network. This is a space for Black empowerment. And we
Absolutely.
believe first and foremost that the first end of Black power is what? Self-respect. So we want to respect our brothers and sisters.
100%.
And we want to, of course, amplify when our brothers and sisters are doing things that are positive, because we know the mainstream media seeks to, of course, amplify the negative,
right,
disempowering aspects of the culture and behavior that we unfortunately see in our community. So you're from Kansas City, right? Reigning Super Bowl champions, right? Trying to build a little dynasty.
Man, bro, like we could be like the first team to ever do a three-peat. I mean, it's definitely possible, right?
Right. Absolutely. And of course, I know a little bit about Kansas City from the Midwest. I'm from the Midwest, Dayton, Ohio.
Okay.
But the Kansas City is much more than barbecue. Kansas, and of course, the Kansas City Chiefs. I'm familiar with Pete O'Neill. But you give us a little background in terms of what it was like growing up in Kansas City.
So, very good question. Growing up in Kansas City is like growing up in a very racially segregated city. You learn to value and to love your Blackness.
Okay.
I always tell people that I'm rooted in Blackness because my family told me, like, Black is beautiful. Black people are smart. They're
Right.
intelligent. It's just that you live in a city that it's a bit, I guess, culturally behind, if you will,
Mhm.
but like it's starting to come up. But there's definitely a divide between the haves and the have-nots. So just really just black and white. I mean, I don't view things from a class lens so much, Bakari, as I view things primarily from a racial lens, and you see that there are places that Black folks were not encouraged to go to,
Right.
and because of that, we had a strong community. Kansas City is one of those places where we really support Black business, which is fantastic. I mean, growing up, there was a place called The Landing, which it's still there. It was a mall that was created and serviced for Black folks. We would go to Black restaurants. So I mean, just when you talk about Black empowerment in KC, that was pretty strong. Like, we have The Call, which is a Black Kansas City newspaper.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't nothing for me to feel like that I am great. It's just that, unfortunately, being Black also means you lack resources. And you see that when you cross, there's a street called Troost. It's the dividing line between Black and white Kansas City. And so you go anywhere west of Troost, you see things get a little nicer. You know what I mean? You see like the schools get a little bit better. Places to eat are a little more high end.
Right.
I mean, you go east of Troost, well, the houses are looking a little rougher. You see a little bit more liquor stores, a little bit
Right.
more fast food chains, and it's definitely not as kept up. And that's just because we just lack resources. But yeah, Kansas City is a place where it's constantly growing. I was there last month, and it's really starting to. I always say this: Kansas City is not only is a racially segregated city, but it's a battle of the old guard versus the new guard. The old guard wants to keep things affordable, wants to keep things where they are. The new guard wants to make things more exciting, and let's bring this in, let's bring this in, let's bring that in. But the issue is the old guard still has the money, so
Right.
the new guard is steadily trying to chip away at that.
Okay. And what led you to move out west? Because you're in California now, the Golden State.
Yes.
What led you to leave the Midwest and go out west?
Man, I always wanted to be in California. Growing up, you would see, movies and TV shows and photos of the beach. Just you would just see how people in California moved and grooved, and it just felt cool. I was like, damn, like I want to see that. And yeah, it was about California, but it was also about wanting to see more. I'm a very curious person. I'm a searcher,
Okay.
Bakari, and I just want to experience as much as I can out there because we have one life, right? So I just felt that although Kansas City is my home, and I'll always be my home. I'm from Southside, you know what I mean? But
Okay.
I just know that there's more than what I was born around, and it doesn't make
Yeah.
Kansas City any less. It's just that I just wanted to experience something different, and it's taken me a while, but it's allowed me to come back and really appreciate what Kansas City is. But man, I'm a West Coast guy, man. I'm in it to win it. You know what I mean?
Understood. Understood. So let me ask you this: what led you to pursue speaking and writing as your profession?
Sure. So writing is my favorite thing in the world to do, right? It's the best thing I know how to do. It's the easiest thing. And so it just came naturally, man. Like I from writing comic books when I was younger to
Okay.
stories to poetry to, you know, essays. I mean, it's everything in my life, or I'm sorry, a lot of things, much things in my life have revolved around writing. A lot of things have, and writing just it's a safe space for me. And I always felt that everyone has a story, and I just want to get my story out. And regarding speaking, I like to ask questions. I love conversations. Just I like to learn. So I just felt that it was very easy for me to disseminate a topic in very plain language. My hero, the late great Malcolm X, he
Yeah.
always said make it plain.
Absolutely.
So
Yes, you did. Yes, you did.
I just want to be able to um propose a subject to get across a point in the simplest way possible. And it's just that's another thing that came easy for me. Of course, I have a stutter, so the mechanics behind it were rough. But once I got over that hump, Bakari, it just became really easy.
Very good. Very good. Um, in your bio, you state that you give talks regarding gender. And what aspect do you discuss gender?
Sure. So everything that I write and talk about is from the perspective of the black man in America. Um, I am what some would consider to be an ADOS, which is American Descent into Slavery. So everything that I write and talk about is from the black male's perspective. So when I talk about gender, I do discuss a lot of men's mental health.
Mm,
June is Men's Mental Health Month, and
okay.
so I write about men, specifically black men, going to therapy. I write about how men have been victims of sexual abuse
Yes.
at the hands of not only men but also
But also women. Yeah.
older women. Yeah, one of the most impactful pieces I've written, Bakari, is that I wrote about how in the hood it's not looked at as a sexual molestation for a young black boy to have his first sexual experience with an older woman.
Right.
But but it really should be, because
Yeah,
these are predators. If
absolutely.
if we flipped it around, an older man, like a young girl having her first sexual experience with an older man, we will be running around with the pitchforks.
Right.
But instead, when it comes to younger boys and older women, it's a pat on the back. Oh yeah, man, yeah, man, you didn't broke your cherry. But that's not the way things should be. Those type of relationships, they result in a sort of a hyper promiscuity,
Absolutely.
um, you know, just a very twisted sense of masculinity, and also just depression and mental health disorders such as that. So that's also something that I
You know,
cover.
and just the veggie back on your point, I'm gonna say veggie back because I don't eat pork, don't eat swine.
Uh,
But we also find that the studies have shown that young men who are victims of that type of age discrepancy in terms of their first sexual experiences tend to actually oftentimes view women in a negative light, see them as
Absolutely.
sexual objects, objectify them, so on and so forth. I can recall this is a couple of years ago. My son was 13. He was at a park, and my son has always been tall for his age. He's about 6'3" now. He's 16. And when he was 13, he was about 5'10. And young lady hit on him. He says, "Oh no, I just looked older than I am. I'm only 13." Guess she was like 22 or 23. And she said it didn't matter. And so, of course, my son, and so I told my son, "You better be glad I wasn't there, because I would have went postal, right?" I said,
Right.
because
Yeah.
it would be hypocritical for me to have to take umbrage if a man was doing that to my daughter, but not to my son, right? So this is a
Absolutely.
great issue that you're bringing up, to where black boys need to be protected as well, not just
Yeah.
black black young black young
You
ladies.
know, man, it's to go even further. It's almost like we look at black boys as just being just lesser. You know what I mean? I mean, a lot of people, a lot of black folks have internalized this, to quote the great Tommy Curry, this anti-black misandry,
Come on now,
right?
but I was going to ask if you knew about them.
Well,
Absolutely,
listen, Dr. Curry, man, he's such a giant. I mean,
yeah,
he's a his theory on white people not there's no excuse, or if there's no such thing as white people being ignorant to racism. It just blew my mind, and it just changed the way that I looked at racism, white supremacy. But in the Man Not, and I've actually interviewed Dr. Curry a couple of times, he talks about this issue of black boys just being sort of cast aside, because again, America, and just though pretty much the world, but we're in America, so
right.
America has always viewed the black man, and by that black man, black boy, as being something that needs to be exterminated, that
Absolutely.
that needs to be controlled. So when we talk about, and look, I'm not a fan of intersectionality. I think it's goofy,
Well,
and I just
if I could, brother,
wait,
because you're preaching to the choir. I'm going to be defending my dissertation next month, and I have a vociferous critique of intersectionality in my dissertation, right? But go right ahead, brother. It's the
no,
reason
man,
why
like,
we connected. Go right ahead.
yeah, no, listen, Bakari, like, we talk about this invisible male privilege, but black men just don't have it. Like, if you look
Right,
at every sociological marker,
right.
black men are
At
at
the
the
bottom.
bottom,
Yeah,
from homelessness to unemployment to over incarceration to health disparities. I mean, it's just it's it's ridiculous. So unfortunately, you have this theory that people have latched onto, intersectionality, that supposedly gives black men uh this power. And I'm like, where? Like, I'm
right.
even if you look at the workplace, I mean, employment, black women outnumber black men, right? And so we're still looked at as the most threatening, as the I mean, to put it into perspective for everyone, there's 2.2 million people locked up, right? All right, so out of that number, and that's prison, that's jail, that's some type of confinement, right? Whether it be house arrest, et cetera, et cetera. Nearly 800,000 of them are black men.
Mm,
I didn't say black people, I said black
black
men.
men.
So
Right.
what that tells you is that it's a to quote Yvette Carnell, political, I guess, agitator and writer, that's not a systemic, I'm sorry, that's not an individual choice, but that's a systemic issue. That's a
Right.
systemic effort to lock Black men up. So this isn't about me disregarding the struggle of Black women. That
Right.
not at all. It's just stating that there's a difference in how we're perceived and in how racism, white supremacy impacts us. And that's something that I learned a lot from Dr. Curry, and just Black male studies being so important, and just how you have a lot of goofy folks trying to attack it. But I'm not telling you nothing you already don't know,
Right.
Bakari, man. I mean,
Yeah,
it is what it is.
I truly came face to face with anti-black misandry when I entered
Right.
into my doctoral program, and I'm talking about being told to my face, "I'm not comfortable around you because you're masculine."
Wow.
Being told to my face, when you enter into a room, you should change who you are to make other people feel comfortable.
Was this by, may I ask, like, this wasn't by nobody white, right?
Oh yeah, I mean, it was by, of course, white professors,
Mm-hmm.
white women, even Black women in the
Already know.
academy were promoting this type of anti-black misandry. And I remember I had a brother who he finished his doctorate uh, in May of 2018. I entered into my program in August of 2018, and he told me these things would happen. I said, "Ah, nah, brother, I'm going to, da 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 da." He said, "Okay." After 1 month, I grabbed my phone and said, "Do you have time to talk?"
Wow.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
at least he's allowing community with you, man. Like,
yeah,
Black men that go into the academy, y'all are very strong, because that is a place that does not like Black men. And there's a specific kind of Black man
right,
that they tolerate.
right.
And Bakari, you are not that. Imagine
I
someone,
realize this.
right? I mean, just imagine someone walking in Black self-respect and not wanting to not only dim their light, but just
Shrink
de-
themselves.
exactly,
Yeah,
and this is a silly word, but like demasculine,
yeah.
like,
No, no, no.
no,
You're on point there, because there was a sister, and I don't mean to interject, but there's a
no.
sister who I look up to. She's probably got about 15 years on me, and she told me, she said, "You're about to graduate. You're on the mark." She said, "You better not neuter yourself when you're in a."
Black
She was
self-respect.
in. You better
Shout
not.
out to that sister.
She said, "You better not neuter yourself."
Shout out to her, man.
Yeah, and this is a sister who's about 15 years my senior, and I had to take that and say, "Hey, if she's telling me this, you know, yeah,
Man, like, they want us to emasculate ourselves. This is why I'm so big on brothers. Like, just stop wearing dresses, stop being goofy. And just,
I
I
mean,
mean,
goofy is a better way. Yeah, it's a nicer way of
yeah,
saying it. Yeah,
you know what I mean. Like, just there's nothing wrong. Look, I when I say being a man, this has no impact on me thinking that, oh, I'm superior, I'm
right.
the head of the household. No, like, I believe in uh utilitarian way, right? If I'm using that word correctly, I believe men and women are equal. We should be partners.
Mhm.
But I should not have to emasculate myself
Right.
because you're uncomfortable with a Black man that stands up straight, you know that loves being a man
Right.
who loves being strong. This doesn't mean that we don't cry, that we don't show emotion, because that's not realistic,
Right.
right? Like, but there's 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 two sides to that coin, Bakari. There's also movement of Black men that say, oh, you need to not cry, you need to always be tough, you need to always be be hard, you don't need to go to therapy. So there's another side to that poisonous coin.
Mhm.
And in my writing, Bakari, I tell Black men, I'm like, listen, man, it is perfectly normal to feel every feeling, to feel every emotion. you
Right.
know Stoicism, I think, is poisonous. I don't think it's helpful at all, man. Listen, bro, when I need to cry, I will cry. You know, it doesn't make me less of a man if, like, my emotions are more than
Mhm.
I'm sorry, anger, excitement,
Right.
happy, and I guess feeling very, lack of a better term, feeling horny. No, I can be
Right.
melancholy. I
Right.
can be sad. I can I can have doubt. I
Mhm.
can have fear.
Yeah.
So I just want all black men to really
Yeah, and it's actually
understand
dehumanizing when black men are
exactly,
limited from being able to have the, of course, full range of emotions.
exactly,
Extremely
man. I mean,
dehumanizing.
you know, we're not John Henry, man. I
Right.
mean, you know,
Matter of fact, that's, and I'm sorry I keep cutting you off, but some of the research I've done focused on John Henry. Because we know when anytime you're dealing with any type of stress or a social problem, you have positive and negative coping mechanisms. And scholars found that one of the negative coping mechanisms was, of course, this concept called John Henryism, where we would just work ourselves to death.
absolutely, yes,
And
sir.
this is something that we saw in maybe we could say previous generations of black men, but they would just work themselves into the ground.
Yeah, because we did not have any outlet. You know, if listen, I'm a humongous proponent of mental health professionals, right?
Mhm.
I think you should find the right mental health professional.
Exactly.
Let me state that because you know, like, social media and on TikTok, there's always some goofy black mental health professional talking about how broken black men are. No,
Right.
get you the I have a therapist. He's a brother. He's thorough. It feels wonderful talking to a black man because, you know, and I'll end it with this, Bakari. Black people face so many different things every day. Like, we're reminded of who we are and where we are every single day. If it doesn't happen to us directly, it'll happen to us indirectly.
Right.
You know, I don't have to be personally impacted by racism, white supremacy to know that, oh, you know what? Racism, white supremacy exists. So we need someone to be able to talk those things out. So, no man's an island, and just imagine someone that's gonna give you the tools to be able to figure things out. To me, that's priceless. I mean, it's a no-brainer, right? So
Absolutely.
black men invest in therapy.
Absolutely. So very quick, because I know we got about 5 minutes left. You wrote a Newsweek article, which of course is the title of today's show.
Yes,
A
sir.
white woman threatened to call the cops on me. False reporting should be a crime. And so in your article, you talked about how basically she threatened the police on you over a parking spot. Something that happens
Right.
every day in America. You say around the world, you're shopping, you get a parking spot, the other person's upset, pissed off. You talked about in the article that initially you were like, I'm not going to engage with you. I'm going to go handle my BI, right? She then took it to the point of, I'm going to call the police on you. You argued that that was a dog whistle for
100%.
black man, stay in your place. What were you thinking when all of this transpired?
You know, it's funny, man. I don't know why she started Breaking Bad on me. I don't, I don't to this day, Bakari, I don't understand, and I don't know why. But she knew she had that leverage on me. You
Mm-hmm.
dig? She understood what that meant. I understood what that meant. See, this goes back to the to what Dr. Curry says. There's no possible way for white people to be ignorant when it comes to racism because they understand the tools that they have.
Mm.
She understood that, okay, I can't handle him by myself, so I'm going to get someone else to help me. Mind you, I
Called a
didn't break
posse.
any.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Called a posse.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, mind you, listen, I didn't break any law. I wasn't even engaging with her because, listen, man, I'm not going to engage with some older woman. You know what I mean?
Right.
I respect my elders regardless of race. And plus, I don't have time for that foolishness. So, I'm trying to do my thing. I'm trying to go handle my business. And so for me to get into a shouting match with her. Plus, let's be honest. She's a white woman. I was in a predominantly white area. San Francisco is a white city. I mean, it's
Right.
violently gentrifying black folks.
Right. It's like Manhattan.
And
Yeah.
man, yeah, I mean it's like it's really starting, man, like sooner or later, you're not going to be able to really tell the difference between San Francisco and Manhattan. Unfortunately, the only thing that Manhattan has over San Francisco is like it's a bit more shinier.
Right.
But um so this woman decides to, she decides to threaten me, and so I froze up and I was like, okay, be careful. One thing about the police and black men, and Bakari, I always say this: if a police officer comes in contact with you, man, it's a flip of a coin.
Yeah.
The last time I was pulled over, I was in Wyoming, and I admit I wasn't driving smart, and so I got pulled over, and I immediately thought, I was like, okay, so do I need to call my mother or someone, keep them on the phone while
Right.
this police officer approaches me? Because again, these are the precautions we have to take. I immediately got my wallet out, and I'm talking to him, and I'm saying, listen, I'm reaching for my registration. It's in the glove compartment. Like, I'm having to, as you said earlier, shrink myself, because this is life or death. So
Right.
when that woman called or threatened to call the cops on me, I knew that I had to do whatever I could to de-escalate the situation. And unfortunately, that meant taking a lot of guff from her.
Mm-hmm. Right. And you just brought up a good point. In your article, you talked about being a black man in America is an exercise in caution. Could you expound on that?
Well, I always say, Bakari, being black is like walking a tightrope, right? It's a balance between, being rooted in your blackness, and also being aware of the surroundings that you're in. Because as you grow, and as you tend to um get more interest, and you want to see different things, unfortunately, your world's going to become wider and wider. um you know being a black man, specifically, we're looked at as being violent, aggressive, as these scary individuals.
Mm-hmm.
So there's not a day that goes by that I'm not aware of who I am. No, I was talking to my dad yesterday, and we were talking about race, and he quoted something from the movie Devil in the Blue Dress. I'm sorry,
Mm.
Devil in the Blue Dress. He said, when when you black, you always in the mix, right? So you have to understand that, um I can't, I can't act carefree, and that's really disappointing, and it's really sad, right? It's like I have to self-police myself in a way, because I know, and don't get me wrong, like, I don't switch it up. I don't change who I am for white people. I don't code switch. I don't do
Right.
Nathan like that. However, I understand that, there are places that I probably should not be in. There are, it's just like whenever I see a white woman, walking towards me, walking the street, sometimes I will just cross the street,
Mm.
right? Or, I don't put myself in certain social situations, because I know the outcome could be, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, um, growing up in the hood, like, we were always cautioned, don't roll four deep. And for those who don't know what that means don't have four people in the car with you, because the police could think that is suspicious. Don't drive with your radio blaring. You know, a lot of what we do as Black Americans, we've been sort of conditioned for safety. Be
Right.
home before the street lights come on.
Right.
My mom would always tell me, be careful driving in these little towns, because they can have their own laws. It's just things like, we've just been socially conditioned to always be hyper aware, hyper vigilant, and
Absolutely.
that's a supremely tough mental toll to take on someone. But that's what it is to be Black. So that's why that line, being Black is an exercise in and caution. It's just real, man.
Absolutely. And of course, I know you have to go.
No, man, you
But
don't.
last but not,
No, it's all good.
but last but not least, and one of the things I liked about your article, and I write as well on Medium, is when we address issues, we also come with a solution. We're solution oriented. So these aren't just indignation sessions where we're just
Right,
spouting
right,
how we feel.
right.
Right. And you talked about the California Assembly Bill 1550, which was passed in 2020. This legislation views these calls of racial harassment, as of course you coined them, as a hate crime, as I would argue they should be. We know there's
Absolutely.
a sordid history regarding this type of thing. Um, and you argue that you believe this should also be nationwide. These calls designed to intimidate and stoke fear into African Americans should be a felony. And of course, I have your the link to your website up here, LeRonBarton.com. In what ways do you think that we could, of course, advocate for, of course, this California Assembly Bill 1550 to become national legislation?
Well, we need to really tap our local politicians. As the old saying goes, all politics are local, right? So
Yeah.
you're not saying that the presidential elections, the gubernatorial elections are, even like the mayoral elections are not important because they have massive implications for our lives. But the laws and the legislations that's really going to impact you are local, and so being that there's so many of these calls that are false reporting, being that the various innocence projects across the country, I believe it's maybe 59%, over 50% of all people who are exonerated are Black men.
Yes.
That tells you that there needs to be some consequence for people calling the police on Black folks just for existing.
There's absolutely.
I mean,
National Registry of Exonerations. Yes.
And man, listen, like, I have a lot of love for the Innocence Projects. The National Registry of Exonerations. I think they do great work as well. And what they show you is that there's a justice system that skews towards Black people being guilty.
Yes.
So, and one of the ways for Black folks to get caught up, or as my father would say, be put in the mix, is for many white people using the police as a way to sort of get Black folks back in line. And there should be consequences because what you're doing is you're using resources that could be diverted towards real issues.
Correct.
You know what I mean? Like spouse abuse, murder, kidnapping, rape.
Yes.
You're taking cops and police officers off of that to be sent towards this Black person you don't like, and that's not okay. And it should be punished, and it should be punished harshly.
Absolutely. So family, and just if you have a little bit more time, I'll put the link in the chat. I know there were some brothers and sisters who stated they wanted to, of course, ask some questions of you.
Please, and
so of course the link is in the chat, family. But once again, I gotta go over the ground rules. We have ground rules here at Lumumba Speaks Equaline Network. And of course, that's number one, diversity of thought is welcome. No racial epithets of any kind. As I said before, this is a space of Black empowerment. So we believe in the 3 N's of Black power: self-respect, self-defense, and of course, self-determination. So no epithets of any kind will be tolerated. If someone uses the epithet, you will go, I'm going to treat you like I'm the guy at the Apollo, deuces, right? Facts over feelings, right? If you disagree with the brother or myself, you attack the argument, not the person. This is not second grade. And of course, no fundamentally false statement. So if you believe, you could believe that LeBron, give an example as always ad nauseum, you could believe LeBron James is the GOAT, right? But if you were to say LeBron James is the GOAT because Michael Jordan only won 2 championships, that's a fundamentally false statement. So this is my platform, and I don't allow people to promote misinformation on my platform because that is a reflection of yours truly. So last but not least, as you all know, our mission here at Lumumba Speaks is neither to exonerate or vilify, but simply to challenge conventional wisdom and re-examine what has previously been accepted as fact. So with that being said, family, the link is in the chat. You all can tap in, ask questions of Brother Barton. And of course, I appreciate you, of course, because we know we've tried to organize this, but
right, exactly, yeah.
time on your Sunday morning on the West Coast, in fact, to have this conversation, which I think is a very important conversation. One of the questions I want to ask of you is: we talked about. I'm not familiar with the work of Dr. Tommy J. Curry. Are you familiar with the work of Dr. T. Hassan Johnson?
For sure. Listen, man.
Okay, very good, very good. Yes.
Yes.
I just bought his book. I just bought his latest book as well. Got it behind me somewhere, but
it's funny, man. Like Dr. Hassan Johnson, like I follow his work on YouTube, and there was
I do too as well. Yes.
He come up with the concept son husband.
Yes.
He's just like, he's so thorough. Like, shout out to Dr. T. Hassan Johnson. Like, just it puts a smile on my face to see the small group of Black men that are just really putting it on for us, and that are just shouting down these misandric arguments, and just
absolutely.
I mean, they're unfortunately Bakari, their megaphone is not as loud as, and listen, this is not to disparage other academics, the academics from the other side of the aisle. I mean, just because I have my criticisms of feminism, I don't think feminism is bad. I just don't think that it's applied well when it comes to Black people. And so you call it intersectional. Well, you guys never address the anti-Blackness from,
and they don't apply intersectionality to Black men. That's an issue as well.
Exactly.
And I read a lot of feminist literature. I mean, I have to being in the academy. I read a lot of feminist literature.
I'm so sorry to hear that.
No, it's okay though, because for me it's great, because then I have an informed critique, right? So if I say I take an issue with something, it's actually, I could quote the person themselves in their book.
Right.
But one of the major issues I have, particularly with feminist theory, is many of the claims they make are just ahistorical. They're adverse to the facts. Right. So like, what the? And people like literally. I would give you an example. This is when I was in my second year of my doctoral program last year, taking classes, and I was taking the class on student activism and higher education. The history of student activism goes all the way back to the butter rebellion at Harvard, right? When students were complaining about we didn't have enough butter in the cafeteria, right? But in the book, the author stated that only women engage in emotional labor in the workplace. So I was like, hold up. Like,
that's just not right.
Emotional labor. I said anyone can engage in emotional labor in the workplace. When I made that statement, this really happened. One of the sisters, this was a sister in the class, said, "Nah, you just saying that because it's about women." And I said, "No, I actually stated, I said anyone can engage in emotional labor. If you're an immigrant working with American born, if you are a member of the LGBTQ community and you work with majority heterosexual, anyone can engage in emotional labor." The professor who was an effeminate brother states, "Well, Black women suffer violence at the hands of Black men." I said, first off, we're not talking about domestic violence. I said, secondly, domestic violence nowadays is bi-directional, right? And I said, you're stereotyping Black men as inherently violent and criminal in nature, right? So he then stated to me, I'm not making this up, I've told the story ad nauseum on this platform. He then stated, "You're using your masculinity to control the conversation." And I said, listen, I said that Jedi mind trick doesn't work on me. I said, I'm 35 with 2 kids. I said, any person with a modicum of self-respect would take umbrage with you stereotyping a demographic group that they're part of as inherently violent and criminal.
Bro, so let me, first off, thank you for saying that. Here's the thing. We talk about, emotional labor. So you mean to tell me that that high school, college coaches don't dole out emotional labor? I mean, it's like, I mean, one of my best friends, and it's sort of roundabout. We were talking about Joe Paterno, and those who don't know, Joe Paterno, he was the Penn State coach who was fired because he had knowledge of his peer Jerry. Yes, sir, Jerry Sandusky molesting boys, right? Mm-hmm. And so I was talking with him. I said, man, I don't know why they would fire Joe Paterno for that.
It's aiding
And
and abetting. What type of, you know what I
right,
mean? What the fuck we
right,
talking about here?
true. And so he said, man, the thing about being a coach, being a sports coach is like you're not only coaching the sport, but you're helping young boys become men.
Mm-hmm.
And I never forgot that. And so when we talk about the emotional labor, not only are you coaching the game, but you're helping them in the game of life. You are sometimes a father figure to these young boys
Right.
that don't have them. So we talk about the emotional labor. That's a pretty great labor to instill, right?
Right.
And so also, you talked about how the person was like, well, black women are victims of violence. First off, white women will be victims of violence from white men because and Mexican women will be victims of violence at the hands of Mexican men. So what they were trying to do, as you stated, is that they were trying to isolate black men as
Absolutely.
as these brutes. Now, not only is interpartner violence bilateral, but Patrice, the relationship that has the most, interpartner violence. And please correct me if wrong, but what I've learned is that it's violence between women and lesbian relationships.
I've read literature. I've read literature on that. I have, and in fact, one of the professors on my dissertation committee was the one who shared it because we're tapping in right now.
Right.
So a lot of the literature, feminist literature, is tied to LGBTQ, and I don't have an issue with the LGBTQ community.
Yeah, no,
but
no,
one of
no.
the arguments they make is that heterosexuality is rooted in patriarchy. Patriarchy is harmful, and therefore heterosexuality is harmful. I've read the literature, so I'm not. Matter of fact, hold on real quick. I actually have the book. It's called Hood Feminism. Oh, here we go. Yep, right here.
Nikki
Hood Feminism.
What's her
Mickey
name?
Kendall. Yeah.
Yeah,
So I've read the book. I read the book.
How is that book anyway, man?
You should read it. I would just say this. You should read it. Because one of the things I do, I read literature that I disagree with. I read the National Review, because once again, I want to be able to have an informed opinion, right? I don't want to operate in an echo chamber. But long story short, they made that argument, and so now people are saying, well, no, we're finding that people who are in these type of relationships are still having high rates of spousal abuse, and the issue is if you don't know how to have a healthy relationship. You don't know how to have a healthy, irrespective of what your sexuality is, what your gender is, right? I always taught my children that every relationship you have, whether it be familial, whether it be professional, whether it be platonic, whether it be romantic, should be rooted in respect, right? Absolutely. The second issue I would always articulate to my children is you have to have the ability, the capacity to communicate how you feel in a healthy manner. Unfortunately, this is not something that a lot of people know how to do.
No.
This is something that people are taught to do, right? My parents never taught me this. Shout out to them. They've been married 47 years. But I saw it grow. My parents never raised their voice at each other. They never called each other by their name. The first time I saw my parents argue, I was 23 years old. And so even though they didn't sit down and explicitly say, hey, Bakari, this is how you're supposed to engage with your partner, right? With your loved one, with your boo thing, with bae, right?
Right.
The fact that I saw this and it was normalized when I went into a relationship, I'm like, why are you talking to me like that? Like, where you get this from? This is adorable. I didn't, even with my siblings, my parents would require us to speak to each other in a very respectful manner. We couldn't even jokingly be disrespectful towards each other. But I digress.
Yeah, no, and thank you for saying that, man. It's not from a. They're trying to pathologize. They're trying to pathologize. They're trying.
I know what you're trying to say. Yeah, I can't say the word either, but I know what you're saying. Yeah,
yeah. It's like they're trying to label black men as these
pathological. Yeah,
pathological, violent patriarchs. When again, women's same-sex relationships have high instances of DV. So what then?
Right.
Like
Matter of
this
fact,
is
yeah, Dr. T. Hassan Johnson even talks about in his book, or but not book, article that he wrote, The Myth of Black Male Privilege. We actually did a show on that about 2 years ago. He talks about that a lot of this is rooted not in terms of outcomes, facts, data, statistics. Shout out to Kevin Samuels, right? But in terms of ideology. And the example he gave is that from
this is how I feel.
from a feminist standpoint, the belief is that if you remove patriarchy, if you remove the father from the home, children do better. However, the data shows that children's the outcomes go down dramatically when the father isn't present. In fact, the likelihood of children being sexually abused goes up exponentially when the father isn't there. So that the argument, of course, belies the data.
Listen, bravo. Here's the thing. And I got to roll, but like I guess the subject, the direction of my writing and my advocacy is towards mass incarceration. It's towards actually post incarceration.
Okay.
And you talk about removing the black man from, or just not even black men, just males from the household. There's, first off, the data doesn't back that up, right?
Right.
And I'll give you a great piece of data. So again, the United States incarcerates more people than any place in the entire world. Like,
right.
We're about 2.2 million.
Yeah, that's what the number I have too. 2.2 million, absolutely.
The country that incarcerates the second country that incarcerates at the highest level is Russia, at nearly 500,000, right? So that's a wide discrepancy, right?
Right.
And so the majority, I believe about 83%, about 80%, roughly 80% of folks who are incarcerated are due to drug issues, right? Some type of drug related crime. Now, if we go even granular, right? What is the one statistic that every man shares who is incarcerated? Mind you, this is not racial. This is not age. This is not class. This is not sexual orientation. What is the one marker that they all share? I'll give you a guess. What do you think that is?
I would think maybe it's a couple things. It could be the literacy level of the man, or the fact that they grew up, unfortunately, without a father in the home.
Bingo. That's it. So this stretches beyond race, class, sexual orientation, age, literacy rate, not having a father in the household. So what you've done is that you've handicapped this person to the point where it will almost always affect the outcome of their life. I am one that grew up without a father, so I know how difficult this is. One of the reasons why that I detested Black Lives Matter. And I'm pretty sure you remember this, Patrice. There was this sort of mission statement that came out that they were all about, Black families, Black villages, like the dismantling of the nuclear family. Yes, they were all about Black trans people, but there was nothing that stated Black men or Black fathers. So,
Dr. T. Hassan Johnson talks about that in his latest book.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I don't think I'm gonna be able to find it. It's back here somewhere. But he mentioned how he stated, and I'm trying to quote verbatim. He says the largest social protest organization of the last 60 years raised millions of dollars based on Black male death, but they don't want those very Black men to be in the Black community and part of Black families. And he said this is an example of anti-Black misandry.
This. Bro, they raised millions of dollars on top of Black male bodies and distributed it to every social group except for Black men. They used that money to prop up black queers, black feminism, black trans. And listen, if you're black, I love you.
Right.
I am for black queers. I am for black trans. But to deliberately ignore, like you raise money on Tamir Rice and Trayvon Martin and George Floyd's bodies, black men, like I mean,
Yeah, I remember Tamir Rice's mother was on several radio stations going in about that. And if you could, I grabbed the book, found the book. Page 6, he states, the proverbial you, as a black man, has been contending with hatred and social disdain intracommunally for generations. And it finally becomes most apparent when the most visible social protest organization in the last few decades profits from black men's deaths while celebrating the idea of their very absence from black families. This recognition of this disdain is the framework of this book. It is the foundation of the black masculinist term.
You know, Dr. T.S. Johnson, he's so needed, right? Yeah. I mean, you know, just imagine like for every Bell Hooks, like,
and I've read Bell Hooks literature. I have her books, and she just makes claims that are just ahistorical. Yeah, it's like, what she's and I did a show on her when she transitioned. We did a show speaking. Yeah,
you did?
Yes, we did.
Can you send me that link?
I would do that. I would do that.
You know, I don't want to make this like I'm like I'm bashing like a specific kind of black way of thought, but just Bell Hooks did not back her findings up with data.
No,
I mean, it's just simple, and obviously her views of the Central Park Five show that there was a heavy disdain for black boys and black men.
Absolutely.
I mean, this person. You know, brother, the really sad thing about Bell Hooks is that her thought is so attractive to non-black women, to non-black people. Period. I was talking with someone recently, and I went on her Instagram page, and she had a Bell Hooks quote, and I'm like, damn, Bell Hooks is floating everywhere, and. Right. And again, like I've always believed everything that I write, everything that I say can be backed up with the data. Right. I'm a TED speaker, right? I've done 4 TEDx's, and one of the biggest rules about TEDx is you have to have data to back your claims up. And so when we get away from this, when we sort of float on identity and feelings, you stated earlier, facts over feelings. When you say stuff like, the Black Panthers were, what did she say? The Black Panthers waited in patriarchy, or how black male slaves had dominion over black women slaves, like that doesn't make sense. Like literally it doesn't make sense because do you honestly think black men had access to some type of patriarchy where their women could be taped and raped and where black men could be raped?
Right.
I mean, just
I could give you another example that she made in her book. I think it was Real Cool. I have a couple of her books.
I got that book too, my man.
And she stated, I may have to, may not be able to quote her verbatim, but she stated that a consensual sexual act between a man and a woman is still a form of violence against a woman.
So you're not giving women
makes no sense whatsoever.
Any kind of agency.
I actually had my sister read this. I had my sister come over to my house, big sis, hi sis, if you watching. And she would like get the French toast out of here. I said, I'm gonna have you read it for yourself, and then you can get the French toast out of here. Talking like this in my house. I'm joking, right? But so she said, why would she say that? I said, well, one, we have to understand Bell Hooks is a lesbian. She's trying to eliminate the competition. It's that simple, right? And so we see that individuals tend to be, unfortunately, extremely disingenuous. They tend to play sick and loose with the facts when it comes to black men, because unfortunately, and even as Dr. T.S. Johnson argues, articulates very clearly in his book, black men aren't considered of any value. This is one of the
Not at
reasons
all.
why we see at the early age with the black boys, right? They're being dismissed at a very early age. The daughter goes to Penn State, the son goes to the state pen. They grew up in the same home.
You know, if you even look at the way our media is, right? And I'll give you an example. I hate watch this show called The Shy, right? I think
Okay,
it's
I've never watched
terrible.
it, but I'm familiar with it.
It's terrible, right? And someone pointed this out on Twitter years ago. I'll never forget. It said The Shy has no decent black men in it. Every black
Mm,
man is a stereotype.
wow.
The black man's a drunk. The other black man, he has multiple children by multiple women. The other black man, he's a gangster.
Mm,
You know, and there's constant crime while the black women are just innocent, and they got to hold down the community. And I'm like, so if you want to write something that's very toxic about black people, look at our entertainment industry, man. I mean, this is so we're nothing more than phallic items.
yeah.
And so going back,
And that's in feminist theory. That's where the concept of the disposable male comes from. You allow them to impregnate you, and then you dispose of them. They're no longer needed or necessary when it comes to the rearing and protection of the child. And I always tell people when we talk about
yeah,
protecting the child, this isn't fee, fi, fo, fum, I'm gonna blow your house down. Part of the protection, I can state this as a father and someone who had my dad in the home, is the social emotional comfort that having that male figure in the home provides, that father in the home provides. Right? There was never a time my dad had to go out and act like he was going to beat somebody up to protect me. I mean, my brother would do that, right? My older brother, but it was the social emotional comfort, the structure that was provided, right? And so
absolutely,
that's something that
absolutely.
many people overlook as well.
Well, again, you would have to look at black men and just men, period, than more than just brutes.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, to see us as being purveyors of social comfort, as being soft places to land, not just quote unquote providers and protectors. You you know, man, we could talk about this all day, just even just from the latest dating discourse to just how
Mhm.
black men, it's so idiotic, right? But again, a lot of this is about black male misandry, man.
Absolutely.
And
You can't have a preference, right?
no,
And if you don't allow yourself to be the victim of verbal and emotional abuse,
bro.
then you're zesty, you're spicy, something's wrong with you,
You
right?
know, man, this is why, bro. Like, and this is probably gonna be a very controversial thing, thing, thing to say, man. But like, our late brother, Kevin Samuels, man, he's missed. Listen, I didn't agree with everything that Kevin
Right.
Samuels said.
Yeah, neither did I, but we understood he was on point about a lot of things.
He like just you don't have to denigrate somebody, right? Like, I'm I'm not for that kind of entertainment, but the brother made a lot of great points. And unfortunately, as you said, black men, we cannot have preferences. Black women always have to be right. And it's just like, well, that's not the way of the world. But
Right.
like, I gotta roll, man.
Absolutely. I
Bakari, this has
appreciate you.
been
And I sent the
incredible,
link
man.
to the Bell Hook show. I sent you the link on Twitter in the messages.
Yes.
Appreciate you once again, family. Let's give a virtual round of applause for Brother LeRon L. Barton. All right, the modern day Paul Robeson. I'm putting that out there, speaking that into existence. Once again,
Thank you.
if you want to find out more about the brother, go to LeRonBarton.com. Once again, brother, thank you for taking time early on your Sunday morning to be part of our dual stream here with Lumumba Speaks and, of course, Be Quiet Network. You're always welcome as well.
Bakari, this has been a fantastic conversation. I cannot wait to come back, man. Like, whenever I have some more material, I'll shoot it to you. We'll be able to discuss this. This conversation is fantastic because this is all about community and
Yeah.
just, as you've seen, we've shown that two black men can have discussions about important topics. It doesn't have to be silly, fantastical.
Right.
It's rooted in fact. And I think that this was a wonderful time. So again, thank you so much, man.
Thank you. Thank
I
you.
really appreciate it.
Yes,
Take
sir.
care, Bakari.
Peace. All right. So family, tap in, be part of the conversation. Kevin Hopkins says, great presentation. Thank you very much, very much. Mr. Sandman, regular contributor here. It's called gaslighting. You're absolutely right. It's called gaslighting. Being disrespectful to the black man, then accusing him of being wrong and problematic and untoward when he defends himself. You're 100% spot on there. And actually, you know, I used to we could get kind of share a personal story. When I was a child, I've shared with you all on, numerous occasions that I'm the baby in my family. I'm the youngest child of my family. And I would actually, you know, be the provocateur of my older sister and brother. I would poke them, prod them, get on their nerves, etc. Then when they would say, look, enough is enough, leave me alone, sit down, be quiet, stop hitting me, or they would hit me back, I would, of course, gaslight and then run to my parents and say, hey, brother and sister are being mean to me. And so I think this is something we have to address as well in the community in terms of how do we address people who are provocateurs, right? So something to, of course, consider. But the link is in the chat, family. Tap in, be part of the conversation. Or, of course, we will log off. But just want to give a great thanks to Brother Barton for tapping in and having a great conversation early this Sunday morning. Of course, it's still Sunday morning on the West Coast. Shout out to California. But I think this is needed and necessary because when we talk about white women threatening to call the cops on black men, we know this is an issue that's historical and, of course, contemporary in nature, but also is representative of anti-black misandry. So just something that I think we need to be cognizant of. Oftentimes when you learn about intersectionality, arguments that black women, they experience misogynoir, right? This special form of racism against black women that's gendered in nature. But oftentimes when you talk to those individuals, they are unable to articulate or even be aware of or even acknowledge that black men face gendered racism as well, right? It's called anti-black misandry. So once again, family, the link is in the chat. The link is in the chat if you want to tap in and be part of the conversation. Of course, we're having a conversation about the weaponization of police against black men. We know this is something that even takes place in the black community, right? Well, oftentimes, if you're having a verbal disagreement with your significant other, she may say, I'm going to call the police on you if you don't leave, which is unfortunate. But then, of course, we can even, of course, open the conversation up to, of course, anti-black misandry, intracommunal anti-black misandry in the black community. So tap in, family, be part of the conversation. And if you have not, make sure that you subscribe to both networks, Bequaline Network, the Pan-African Social Media Extraordinaire, and, of course, LeMumbaSpeaks.com, a Black empowerment initiative where we believe we can gain a competitive advantage by always, keyword always, not sometimes, not happenstantially, not sporadically, but always betting on black. Of course, you can visit us at LeMumbaSpeaks.com if you're interested in speaking, booking us for a speaking engagement. And once again, if you could be a blessing to the show, you, of course, can share with us at $Lumumba Speaks on Cash App. So once again, family, I want to thank everyone for tapping in, being part of the conversation. Once again, I want to give John Warren, $10,000 bet that white woman who threatened to call the police is a conservative, Trump-loving Republican, any takers. But I would argue you find this amongst even so-called liberals, right? We tend to find liberals tend to have a very negative view of black men, irrespective of what their political ideology is. Of course, I can speak to that due to my experience in higher education, where these are people who are liberals, they're for Black Lives Matter, etc., but they still have a misandric view, of course, of black men. But of course, I'm not going to take you up on that bet. Right? I'm not going to take you up on that bet, but I understand where you're coming from there. So once again, family, tap in, be part of the conversation. If not, we're going to, of course, log off, and thank everyone for coming in and, of course, listening to what our great guest, Brother LeRon L. Barton, had to say regarding his experience. And of course, family, as he stated, reach out to your local congressman about that bill that was passed in California, which of course was California Assembly Bill 1550. Of course, Assembly Bill 1550, which was passed back in 2020, and try to get that on the ballot, you know, in your state, right? And so that we can definitely address those issues. And of course, somebody mentioned that false reporting is a crime. Well, it's based on the state and municipality. In the state of Ohio, particularly in my hometown, false reporting is not a crime, unfortunately. But we do remember that the black girl, the black woman who was in the Birmingham area who lied and said she was kidnapped. We actually did a show on that last summer. It's unfortunate, but we tend to find that these issues are based on almost the view of the prosecutor rather than it being mandated by law. So, Brother Jay, what's going on? What's going on, brother?
How are you, sir?
I'm doing quite all right. And real quick before you get started, were you able to do the reading that I sent you?
Well, I was able to read the summary of what I sent you, and I was also able to read perspectives from other scholars in history, and there were complete disputes between the two. That's what I discovered.
But you were able to actually read the articles that I emailed you.
Well, only the summaries.
Okay. So I would push you to, of course, read the entire articles, because of course they deal with the details and the facts of the case rather than just a summary that kind of gives you a broad overview of what they're going to be discussing. But go right ahead, brother. How do you want to contribute today?
Well, basically, I wanted to ask a question about, do the police, there was an Asian hate bill after the coronavirus, where the Chinese were able to successfully lobby because of, the level of discrimination that they were receiving. So how come the Black American community have not been able to get similar legislation in regards to an anti-Black hate bill? What's going on there? I mean,
right. Here we use the term African American rather than Black American, right? We want to emphasize our ethnic identity rather than racial identity. Yeah. So I think there's a couple issues there. I think internally what we're seeing is I would argue the selling out of Black elected officials. We tend to find, particularly with Black elected officials, there's a focus, particularly amongst Black voters, rather for symbolism over substance, right? As long as the person looks like you, people don't tend to actually care if they're providing tangible outcomes while they're in office serving their constituency. The second issue is what we have found is that historically that there have been laws passed that are supposed to be beneficial in terms of protecting the African American community. One example would be the 14th Amendment. However, what we found was that was what extended to benefit other groups of people, not just African Americans. And of course, when we look at the history of America, America's view of Black people is that Black people have no rights that America is bound to respect. So what we tend to find is historically in America is that whenever there's been a real or even perceived Black progress, it's followed by periods of racial retrenchment, right? The other issue is when we talk about the Asian hate bill was that even though the individuals who were engaging in these type of hate crimes against Asian Americans were white people, Black people still became the face of anti-Asian hate. So that just shows you how ubiquitous anti-Blackness is in America, and how we're the fall guy, we're the fall people for whatever happens in, of course, this country.
So are you saying that the reason they got past the anti-hate bill was anti-Asian hate bill was because they used Black people as a prop in order to say, look, we need this because Blacks are persecuting us. Do you reckon that was a political strategy, or is that too conspiratorial?
I don't know if it's a political strategy. What I will say is this is something that was being promoted by the mainstream media. Even though the perpetrators who have been arrested, convicted of engaging in these type of racial hate crimes against Asian Americans were white, when you turn the TV on, they were articulating and promoting a narrative as if Black people were the progenitors and disseminators of anti-Asian hate.
So, a lot of African American broadcasters, and you got the new Black media, people like Professor Black Truth and people like Jason Black of the Black Authority, what they say is too many of the congressional Black Caucus members have actually sold out. Unlike someone like,
Oh, no,
say,
I would agree. I would agree. I would agree. You could go to the website, and on the website, I did this a couple years ago. They state that they're for all people, right? When you go to the Latino Congressional Caucus, it says we're for the Latino community. When you go to the Asian Congressional Caucus, we're for the Asian community. So I would actually, I would have to agree with that position that they've made, the position that they've taken.
So why is it that some groups like the Asian Americans and the Latino Americans, why are they able to, put forward representatives that actually fight for their interests? And why is there like a disconnect between the African American elected officials and the people? What do you think needs to be fixed so that you can have people that will go in to Congress and the Senate and all the halls of power, and how would you ensure that they actually fight for the African American community?
Well,
Because
I think
I don't know what's going on there.
I think that's a great question, and my thoughts on this. One of the issues is that these candidates who are elected to represent our community, they're selected before they're elected, right? And so typically, what you find is these individuals who are elected, doesn't matter if they're Democratic or Republican, they are elected to represent the position of the party, not the constituents that they're supposed to be serving.
Right. So how do Black people, circumvent that? Because
yes, we have to. One, we have to have our own independent think tanks, Black think tanks, not Black Democratic think tanks, not Black conservative Republican think tanks, but Black independent Black think tanks, in which we run our own, we fund and identify and run our own candidates for political office, rather than depending on the Democratic or Republican Party. That's, to me, the solution. And we've seen that work. In my hometown of Dayton, Ohio, we had 2 elected officials who were independent. They were independent of the Democratic machine, in the Republican machine, and they were able to be elected to city council. Another great example is Chokwe Lumumba Sr. and Jr., who were, of course, devout Pan-Africanists who were able to become mayor of Jacksonville, Mississippi, running independently, not as a member of a Democratic ticket or Republican ticket. But it comes to what we have to be grassroots in our orientation with politics, where we're not just advocating and protesting, but we're also running and financially supporting our own candidates.
So, my deepest concern is a lot of people tell me that the African American community seems to be married to the Democrat Party. Now, is this not detrimental? If you think that if the Democrats are like, well, we're guaranteed to get the African American vote, then they'll technically do nothing for the African American community. Like the Latino.
But the thing is, we find that with both political parties. Both political parties don't do anything for Black people, because both political parties are white supremacist organizations. So it doesn't matter which political party you engage in, you're still going to get the same results. That's why we said we have to be independent in our politics and run our own and financially support our own candidates. That's the only way you're going to get a solution.
But don't you want to try to influence either Republicans and Democrats from outside? Because that's what I believe the Latino communities, the Asian communities are also doing. They're just acting as a lobby group for their community in order to ensure that Democrats and Republicans work for their interests. Because here's the thing, my deepest concern is that even though the Asian American community and the Latino community have, independent think tanks themselves, perhaps presumably, they still ensure that they try and push the Democrats and the Republicans in one direction or another. Is that not a strategy, or is that going to, make Black Americans fall? I'm not advocating that they just, completely follow them blindly, but I'm advocating that, perhaps they try and push them one direction or another, like the way the other communities have successfully done.
And I hear what you're saying. The issue is, and this is just my opinion, right? This is not like this is a fact, but other racial ethnic groups are able to come here and get concessions from the power structure because they are able to they serve as a buffer community between whites and blacks.
Okay.
That's the position that I take. Right. So this is why you can see other minoritized groups that are able to in 20 years get something that black people have been fighting for 400.
Right. So essentially, you're saying that it is really the white power structure that has like a pecking order where African Americans are at the very lowest end of the social spectrum, and the other ethnic groups who are more lighter skinned are given preferential treatments as like a buffering class. So that's probably the reason why they're able to lobby more effectively. So it's really a systemic thing rather than their capacity that enables them to get ahead in life.
Correct.
Right. Okay. Just another issue I have. I've been noticing a lot an inter-tribal warfare among people within the diaspora. So you have African American.
Let's say ethnic warfare rather than tribal.
My apologies.
No
Inter-ethnic violence, warfare. Both. Really verbally within the diaspora. So you'll have African Americans that don't like the Nigerians or Ghanaians, or you'll have Jamaican Americans that don't like the Nigerians, and vice versa. So there's all three communities fighting amongst each other. So obviously, how will you be able to set up a think tank and say, listen, Ghanaians and Caribbeans, work with African Americans? Because whenever I go onto some of these media platforms and I say, look, unify, I'm like scolded. I'm attacked viciously by African Americans. So, because how do you get around that problem of disunity? Because that's going to really hurt, isn't it?
Yeah, and so I would agree with you there. Unfortunately, we see the proliferation of course, that this what some people call diaspora wars. What I'll argue is that people who engage in those type of diaspora wars are individuals who aren't politically mature. For example, what we tend to find is that individuals that do that, they're willing to go after a softer target rather than the entity that's actually responsible for African people's social, political, or global social, political, and economic quagmire. So it's almost like if you're on the playground as a kid and you don't want to fight the bully, but to save face, you go pick a fight with someone you think you can beat. That's what's really going on here. Right? Okay. And so those are individuals who, in my opinion, lack the level of political maturity and gravitas to even be in those spaces doing that type of work.
Okay. And, coming on to the issue of, there's also a gender war between black men and black women. I've noticed there's the issue of like Ibmore, you've heard of them, black men going their own way and black incels. And then you also have ratchet feminism. So, and that's been proliferating quite a lot on social media. I mean, is there like a way of bringing the two groups together? I mean, I'm concerned about that.
Yeah, I don't know. Once again, I think that part of this is an ideological war, right? I think that is a reality, and so we're oftentimes we're fighting for the hearts and minds of our people. But I'm into, of course, organizing and working and building with brothers and sisters who are like-minded, right? There are some times where you can get a person to see the error or the ways, but I'm more so focused on trying to work with people who are like-minded, right? And so. For me, I tend to avoid those type of spaces.
Yeah, I mean, the reason I get into those types of spaces myself is that I try and like reconcile and I try and like bring the two opposing sides together, which not to much success, I admit, but that's one of the main reasons why I actually get involved in those spaces, and it can be pretty cumbersome and rather tiring. And finally, my last point I would believe would be, in the past when the Asian Asian community came into the United States, and when the sub-Indian community came into the US, is it true to say that they were given bank loans for opening up businesses, and is it true to say that the African American community would deny those very same bank loans so that they could set up, so that the immigrants could set up shop in the African American community and thereby deprive the African American community their own markets? Is that correct or accurate to say?
So we do know that historically and even contemporarily, African Americans have been denied business loans. What I do not know is if other racial ethnic groups were provided business loans to set up shop in the Black community. That is not a claim that I could substantiate. I do not know.
Okay. Yeah, because there are quite a few people that are making that particular claim. And as a result of this, you'll find the detrimental situation in which the vast and overwhelming majority of the businesses in the Black American community are run by Arabs, Chinese, Indians, and Latin Americans. And then, you'll barely find any African American businesses in the other communities, and that is very detrimental to the situation. And also the university situation as well. They've got rid of affirmative action thanks to the help of the Asian community. I think they were totally divided in what they did. Has this had an impact upon the African American community, or has it just affected other immigrant groups? What would you say to that?
I haven't done a lot of research on that because, of course, this was something that pertained to higher education. So I would actually have to do a little bit more research before I can actually give you an informed opinion from my perspective on that issue.
All right, then. Thank you very much.
No problem. No problem.
I hope I haven't taken up too much of your time, sir.
No, it's quite all right. Just make sure you subscribe, like, and hit the notification bell. You're watching a dual stream with LeMombaspeaks.com, a Black Empowerment Initiative, where we believe we can gain a competitive advantage by always betting on Black. And of course, Beacon Network, the Pan-African social media extraordinaire. We're logging off until next time. Y'all know what to do. Peace.